Water, the most common substance on Earth. It is with us every moment of our lives. Like the human body, the Earth maintains a constant amount of water. If the quantity of water is reduced, or at least one of its amazing features is changed, then life on Earth will vanish. Just like you, Earth is a living, dynamic being. It has veins and arteries with water flowing through it, which are connected to one large, thriving heart, the ocean. It evaporates water and returns it back to the hydrologic cycle as rain, falling down on mountaintops, which again form veins and arteries that return to the ocean. It is this constant water circulation that keeps the planet alive. We are just like the surface of the Earth, at least 70% water. We also have a heart and 60,000 miles of veins and arteries. And like our planet, it is water that gives us life, replenishing our cells in a continuous water cycle.
The system of the universe exists as a single perfect organism. All of its parts, including us and our Earth, are inseparably bound together by huge streams of information. And on our planet, water plays the key role in how the information is exchanged. In effect, it is the medium through which all nature is governed. Our Earth is a giant container of water in which all forms of life arose, and every living thing is itself essentially a container of water. Depending on age, a human being is made up of 70 to 90% water. An adult drinks approximately 2.5 liters of water each day in order to sustain his normal life functions. Another 1.5 liters is absorbed through the skin during bathing or showering. Science has not yet been able to answer the question of why water is the only substance on the planet that can exist in three states: liquid, solid, and gaseous. Why does water have the highest surface tension of all liquids? Why is it the most powerful solvent on Earth? And how, in defiance of the Earth's gravity, is water able to rise through the trunks of gigantic trees against tens of atmospheres of pressure? In a seed, for example, it reaches 400 atmospheres at the moment of germination. That's why a plant shoot can break through asphalt with ease. The water, of course, remains water, but its structure, like a nervous system, reacts to any irritation.
The water molecule is a dipole. One end is charged more negatively, and the other more positively. This is a well-known phenomenon. A molecule acting through its negatively charged end can attract another molecule by its positively charged end, and then another molecule. This is how the structure of water is formed. It is fluid and short-lived. Somehow, among the changing forms, one can see stable formations. These are called clusters. It is within these structures that water retains information it has captured. Any substance coming into contact with water leaves a trace in the water. Had our ancestors guessed this when they used silver vessels to turn ordinary water into healing water? In the 1960s, in a closed laboratory in Germany, something inexplicable occurred. A laboratory assistant dropped a vacuum-sealed ampule containing virulent poison into a vessel with distilled water. Trying to conceal her blunder, she just left it in the water. The ampule was discovered only 3 days later. Since it was sealed, it did not pose any special hazard, and the matter was closed. Later, the water was given to laboratory mice. And they died. Immediately, the water was thoroughly tested. Chemically, it proved to be impeccably clean. It meant that the water without direct contact with the poison somehow adopted its properties. In other words, it received negative information from the poison.
A fantastic hypothesis was put forward, a hypothesis that could explain water's unpredictable behavior. Water has memory. Experiments done in many countries around the world have shown that water receives and makes an imprint of any outside influence, remembering everything that occurs in the space that surrounds it.
It makes no difference where the water is located. If you transport water to outer space, it remains sensitive to what it encounters. NASA scientists discovered this when they released water in a low-gravity environment.
If pure water is hard to make, is hard to get, and it's kind of reactive, it's very polar liquid, and so it tends to dissolve things and grab things, and they become what we call surface active. If you take a drop of oil or something like that, it won't do that. Ethanol or alcohol won't do that, but water is a highly contaminable surface. Junk on the mandrel that they use to make the balloon instantly in the liquid. Now when you deploy that,
collision dynamics in action. Most of the collisions were created in a rebound or elastic fashion, bouncing off each other and the wall. But on occasion, an internal bubble would oscillate, and the momentum would carry it across the interface in a mass transfer.
The structure of water means how its molecules are organized. We can see how water molecules join together into groups. Scientists these clusters work as memory cells of a certain sort, in which water records the whole history of its relationship with the world, as if on magnetic tape.
If you consider a cluster as a group of specific molecules, then it can survive only a short amount of time. But if you consider it as a structure whereby molecules can leave and other molecules come in, the cluster can last effectively for a very long time.
The stability of the cluster structures confirm the hypothesis that water is capable of recording and storing information.
It may be the single most malleable computer, it's like a computer memory. It's the memory of information. We must know how it is arranged. It is like the alphabet. If I give you the alphabet, you don't know a word, you don't know a letter, you don't know a sentence. So the molecular structure is the alphabet of water. And you must make a sentence out of water, and you can change a sentence.
This leads us to the idea that information is either made up of water or exists in it.
Like sculptures that have not yet been created are present in a piece of clay, so the images of all future living organisms were present in the water. Water merely brought to life a pre-existing conception, but for any process to begin requires an impulse. Wise men of ancient times believed that for life to arise was a primordial divine spark. This spark imprinted in the water the sequence of future development. The entire course of evolution provides evidence of this.
There are such animals, for example, jellyfish. Jellyfishes are 99.9% of water. And we, as biologists, study the left 0.1% of this jellyfish in order to understand how this bulk water, why it is alive. Probably this water is alive, and this 0.1% simply allows it to be alive. We ourselves, when we were newborns or when we were fetuses, we were 95 or even more % of water. We were already alive.
I think that scientists should look more closely at how water interacts with their molecules. At a molecular level, it creates the structure of DNA. We wouldn't have the DNA helix without water. It creates the structure of proteins, so our bodies wouldn't work without the water.
Water is a universal computer that reveals any biological program, and thus, water is the only thing that can change it. Water has a life cycle of its own, flowing from melting glaciers down steep mountain slopes. During the journey down, the crystal streams are filled with the energy of the sun. They absorb information about the properties of the soil, about the composition of minerals and rocks. The impressions of such water are full of fresh air. These impacts change water structurally. Meanwhile, for a human being, water remains the same, without taste, without color, and without odor. Yet it's impossible to find identical water on Earth. Water is like a clean sheet of paper, which can be changed by a tiny brushstroke. The great artist Leonardo da Vinci wrote, "Water assumes a special character, as many times as there are different places where it flows." On Okinawa Island in Japan, people live incredibly long lives. They suffer very few cases of common human diseases, such as diabetes, arteriosclerosis, and cancer. One of the explanations is that they drink water vitalized by the coral their island rests on. These natural bodies are not only stunningly beautiful, but also extremely long-lived. The most ancient of them are more than 600 million years old. The coral imprints the water with information about longevity, which is then passed over to the water medium of the human body, tuning it for long life. 75% of the human body consists of water. If the body loses 2% of its liquid content, we become thirsty. If it loses 10%, we start hallucinating. If the body loses over 12% of water, we die. In the language of the Pemon Indian tribe in Venezuela, Roraima is translated as the mother of all waters. A group of Russian biophysicists set out for this destination in January 2005 to collect a unique sample of water, which scientists say has never been in direct contact with human beings. Such water exists in only one place on Earth, in Venezuela. According to one hypothesis, a continent called Gondwana existed in the southern hemisphere during the Paleozoic era. Powerful tectonic processes occurring in the Earth's crust 3.5 million years ago split it into several parts. As a result of these changes, some segments of the continent sank, while those resting on granite substrates remained at their previous level. Elevated plateaus were formed, which the Indians called tepuis, meaning pillars. Roraima is the largest of them.
Это настолько отдаленное место.
It's a really remote place, very hard to get to. 3 days of travel through the savannah and then the jungles. Then you climb an 800-meter wall. It takes a certain amount of enthusiasm. Therefore, we can say that the water we have there is in a unique, virgin state.
Воду в ее девственном, уникальном состоянии.
There is always a large cloud over Roraima. As evening approaches, a light haze appears. When the moon comes out from behind the mountains, the mist begins to glow with an even blue light. And in that light, it is visible how fine droplets of moisture are hanging in the still air. The slightest breath